BC, here we are.
Good morning, Joe.
The HETMA conference. So we have been talking about this, for almost a year, maybe not quite a
Roundabout.
year.
Yeah, something close to
And
that.
and now we're finally kind of here and getting this together. I want to thank everyone for joining. I know everyone's going, what the heck is this thing too, right? Because we've got a mishmash of sessions coming up, and people are wondering what is HETMA. They've probably heard about it on the Higher Ed podcast because we've promoted it there, and we kind of flurried people with save the date flyers. So let's kind of go back, and before we get into kind of what the state of higher ed is, let's talk about where we came from. Why is this here, and what we're looking to do? So
absolutely,
this started because of something we went to in Japan almost 2 years ago. It feels like I keep saying it's like yesterday, but it's really been almost 2 years. So, all right. So what was that? Let's talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we met up out there at a kind of a little bit of a show and tell feedback forum for a manufacturer. And it became pretty clear at that point that there was an avenue for this, for higher ed technology managers to speak for our industry as opposed to having others speak for our industry. Kind of provide that direct input for manufacturers and integrators and consultants as to, you guys have buzzwords and certain products and channels that you're pushing right and left. But the higher ed market, when you look at it and take a step back, it is a massive market that has pretty individualized needs here and there. I mean, if you look across a normal campus enterprise, you've got conference rooms, normal general purpose classrooms, AV Phenom's favorite auditoriums. They're all over the place. You got special purpose rooms. So it's not like your normal typical corporate environment where you just have a few conference rooms here and there and maybe a large meeting room for the CEO to do board meetings. It's a very diverse market, and what we deal with on a daily basis goes from everything from plugging in an HDMI cable because someone needs assistance doing that to planning out a massive capital project. So it's, like I said, it is all over the place, and it's controlled chaos on most days. So really kind of being able to speak up and say, hey, this is what we are particularly looking for to solve problems X, Y, and Z, I think is going to be a really strong force in the industry.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of the thing, right? When we were out there in Japan together and we were talking to the manufacturer, and we realized, well, wait a minute, why are they asking us these questions, right? Why are they, is it going to be sort of a dog and pony show? Sure, right? Let's take a bunch of people out there so they buy a bunch of product. But yet what we noticed was they really listened, right? Yeah. And we recognized that, wait a minute, then why is this happening? That's because we have that buying power, right? We have that ability to actually influence an entire vertical. And that's kind of how this came about. We come back and we're like, what's going on? I mean, this was a great opportunity, but then it was just gone, right? Right. It's like, okay, all of that, we'd set our piece, but maybe we can continue with this a little bit more. We can do this a little bit on a larger scale. And that's what the Higher Ed Technology Managers Alliance came through. I mean, how many different names did we go through in trying to figure out?
At least 20. At least 20 trying to figure it out.
How many different ways can you move words around until you get something that can come up with something that you can say?
Yeah, it was a real life Scrabble game going on.
And so that's kind of where we're at, right? And we thought, okay, well, what if we can find a way to build the community and to be able to build our influence as an alliance? I think that's the key word, right? And to be able to hold this think tank of other higher ed tech managers, as well as, our steering committee, which we have some incredibly talented people on our steering committee. And we thought, okay, well, let's throw this out and let's do our very first virtual conference. Mm-hmm. How can we actually get together? We know that, some of us can travel around, some of us have big budgets, but most don't. most can maybe pick one or two things, right? So how can we continue this conversation? And that's what the point of this is, right?
Exactly. And it's, you got folks that go out to the Infocoms and the CCUMCs and regional meetups. And one thing that's always the biggest takeaway, at least on where I come from, is that it's those conversations that take place outside of the presentations that are always the most valuable. It's not sitting in there and listening to this manufacturer lecture about this or this process be picked apart and then rebuilt. It's always those conversations that we have with each other, and sitting there and telling those war stories, and and saying, hey, I've got this problem on my campus, and you guys encountered that, and then someone will inevitably have already encountered that, so you can pick their brain and figure out how they overcame that issue with a successful outcome. And that is invaluable community experience and interaction as well.
Yep, 100%. And the thing is there's a lot of great organizations that already support us, right? Whether it be Avixa or CCUMC and even EduCause, who have great opportunities for us to work with within the industry. But what we're doing is like, how can we do that conversation among one another, right? Mm-hmm. And be able to offer that. Because again, I mean, we all know we have, you send one email to any integrator and tell them that you're looking to upgrade, 25 rooms over summer. Mm-hmm. You're going to get all the information. You're going to get them there showing up. You're going to get the information, but you also know you get a sales speech with it too, right?
Without a doubt.
And so how can we actually reach out and get the information and have that influence as colleagues? And that's where we ended up kind of coming up with this idea, right?
Right, and it's that word of mouth that travels, because I know we all know that there are good actors and bad actors, and talking with one another, we can kind of build that background information. So at the end of the day, we're all trying to do the best that we can possibly do for our institutions. So more information is always going to be good information.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. And then it's amazing how we've already seen this begin to grow, and how we've seen that our colleagues have been wanting to come together and say, yes, I want a voice. Not even just to mention the manufacturers who've come to us and said, yeah, I mean, we would love to be able to have a focus group of people that we could send, 20 different people, 20 different organizations, and send them product to and say, evaluate this for us, give us honest feedback. Where else can you do that? Because most integrators are not going to let you do that.
No, not at all. Not at all. And being able to do this, and thankfully we're at the technological point where this is possible, we can bring in everybody from big institutions to your smaller institutions, like you're saying, with limited travel budgets. Now we all can always be talking and have a voice and communicate without having to wait for those 1 or 2 times a year we might be able to meet up. And even when you do, there's generally so many people that you're never going to see everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I always think too, and I know I preach this all the time, about what's special about our vertical, right?
Oh, without a doubt.
The fact that we, I always say that we have purpose behind what we do. And I don't think that all other AV verticals have that, right?
No.
Opportunity for us to kind of give.
Yeah, it's something that I know I've talked about on your wonderful podcast in the past, is that, what we do, we're not making widgets and whatsits out there. We're contributing, albeit probably in a smaller capacity than we like to admit sometimes, but we're contributing to the knowledge and the institutions that are going to be continuing to grow. Like we in one of our classrooms could be the student that cures cancer, solves that clean energy question. What we're doing is unique in that nature.
Yep. And that's one thing I always love is that, I spent many years outside of the higher ed before coming in, and it was a business. I was on the business development side of the entertainment industry. And, it's so easy to do things for yourself. And it's like, okay, I need the paycheck. And okay, obviously we all want the paycheck, but it's amazing how you just keep doing that. But then when you come into higher ed, and you actually have that student worker who sits there and learns, and they get it,
mm-hmm.
and they, and they come to you, and, how many of us now have, I love the fact that I have one of my former student workers, one of the very first ones, is now on my staff.
Mhm.
And we just talk. I mean, I've talked to other people that same way too, that just to build and to know that we can have a greater purpose within what we do. And it's just that AV is just the medium for doing it, right?
Exactly.
And we actually can impact lives that way.
Yeah, it's always gratifying to see those survey results or get those emails in from faculty members talking about how our team was able to help facilitate their lesson that day, or added another dimension to what they would have normally just done in a lecture format. You know, we do contribute.
Yep, 100%. So now that's a little bit of how we got to where we are, right? So we get there, we've put together our steering committee, and I mean, I guess we want to make the call out too that we want people, anyone who wants to get involved, let's do this. You know, reach out, let's continue this conversation to be able to influence. And I love this. So James Gonzalez just put on the chat, you know, I agree 100%. Higher ed directly impacts our society. I mean, isn't that awesome?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there's your call out, James. Hey, no, but and also I guess we should invite people to put that to put in the chat, because you know this is a conversation, and that's why we're doing this. You know, I put out over Twitter, you know, the little title slide, and I said, you know, this conference is not talking heads. It's not a slide deck, even though I don't know, am I still sharing my slide? I don't even know if I am. You know, and you know, it's us having real conversation about real issues, bringing in real SMEs, and being able to, you know, talk about the issues we're facing. And we
Exactly.
and we've got a lot of good ones coming. So I guess now that we've given the history, we should actually probably go back and do what we should have done at the beginning and introduced ourselves.
Yeah, that might have helped.
You want to do that? So, so who are you? Who am I talking to?
I don't. Most days I have to ask my wife who I am. No, so my name is, for those of you I haven't met before, I had the pleasure of meeting. My name is BC Hatchett. I'm the Associate Director for AV Design and Support and Media Services at Vanderbilt University here in Nashville, Tennessee.
All right. And of course, I am Joe Way. I am the Director of Learning Environments at the University of Southern California out here in the great metropolis of Los Angeles. And so BC and I were the first kind of two of the steering committee. We have Dean also on the steering committee who was on our initial trip too. Mm-hmm. So, and we have a lot of great members. Again, you can kind of go to hetma.org, and we're going to go through this, but our keynote now is the state of higher ed, right? So I would say, you know, if we were being presidential, right, we would say this, you know, the state of the union is strong, but what is it? Is it's fine today, right?
We're doing all right today. It is fine today. Yes.
And is it changing? It's confusing? It's exciting? What is it?
It's something different every day, Joe. I mean, I know, especially specifically with us, we just got finished wrapping up a chancellor search. So, you know, there's always uncertainty because, like you said, higher education is not a company that's making products. We're making people, we're making ideas, we're making research. So we have a specific niche to fill. There's always increasing challenges, especially when it comes to funding and research innovation and recruitment. So overall, I would say that higher ed is strong, but there are challenges coming up. I know you can't turn on the television anymore these days without seeing concerns over the growing student debt bubble and how to address that. You see concerns about return on investment for educational degrees. You've got students coming in spending six figures for a degree. Are they going to be able to realize a return on that investment? And I think that's one of the biggest things now is that degrees and education are being looked at as an investment, not as a way to not just the natural progression of an education. So people are starting to become a lot more concerned with where they spend their tuition dollars, how they spend their tuition dollars, and are they going to be able to come out of college and come out of university and be able to enter the job market successfully? And what kind of job market are they going to be entering?
Oh, that's great. Because it's so true. And it's interesting because, you know, one thing that I learned when I came here, and especially when you kind of come to a top tier institution, SC has this, you know, kind of a university of spoiled children is kind of what most people refer to us as. But to recognize that I have a number of student workers who are on food stamps. I have student workers. We have people here who are homeless. We have what students are having to put themselves through today. And not even just here. What's the cost of going to college? And these are real issues that our students are facing, you know, and we deal with that because we have them. They're in our office, and we're building relationships with our student workers day in and day out. And, you know, to now have to be able to share in their problems and their struggles. I mean, that's the real state of what we're doing. I mean, and let's talk about, I mean, if you want to get this down, what about tariffs coming in? How is that going to impact our, you know, the AV that we're buying? Does that mean, do we have to cut down the number of spaces we do, or do we get more funding, which means that tuition goes up? I mean, what are the consequences of the things the industry is facing right now?
Without a doubt. I mean, whenever we're starting to look at our summer projects and build out projects, you know, one of the questions we ask is, how are tariffs impacting things? You know, how is the market starting to steer what we're able to purchase because of external forces? And if you look at the AV industry, and specifically to higher ed, I don't know of any other departments on campus that have to literally work with every other department on campus to complete a project. So having to work with the trades and knowing kind of what resources they're having to go through to be able to get accurate staffing. Nashville right now is going through an unprecedented building boom. Like, they're throwing up high rises and construction projects if they can get 2 or 3 square feet of property, basically. So knowing that, hey, you know, we're gonna have to pay more for electricians right now. We're gonna have to pay more for laborers because the way that our job market is going, it really impacts kind of like what you're talking about, our funding levels. Like, we have to take into account a lot of external forces that other industries don't really have to deal with.
Yeah. And it's funny because most people don't think about it. And then, of course, and if you're like us, you're planning well ahead of time for what you're going to do over the next summer, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're probably already, and I would assume most schools are in the same position. You've got your list of stuff that you've nailed down for this coming summer. But what if tariffs go into effect in February? I mean, 25% on our stuff. And now, granted, we know every manufacturer is coming to us and saying, oh, well, we manufacture in the United States. It's not going to matter. Oh, come on. Your chips are coming from China. They're going to still increase the price on us. You know, how is that going to actually impact those faculty members that we already said that we've promised that we're going to, you know, upgrade their space? And now we're coming back. These are times that we really have to think about these things.
Yeah, purchasing always gets tricky because I'm not sure how everybody else is kind of funded, but we get that fun challenge of, we've got 3 months in the summer to get everything done. But of course, that straddles our fiscal year. So having to pre-buy and make sure that we have enough materials on hand before that magic pot of money gets refilled is always a challenge. So you have to be very strategic in your planning and your purchasing to make sure you meet those deadlines by August.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, and because even on the chat here, Matthew puts, you know, same challenges concerning growth in Boston. And, you know, I don't know whether that's, you know, that it's growth in which way that's meant, but let's take California. I mean, everyone knows that we have a mass exodus of people leaving California, right? The high taxpayers are leaving California, which means how is that going to impact the state schools? I mean, I'm at a private school, but the state schools really run the state. Right. And they're the ones who are really driving a lot of things. And so the bubble's going to burst at some point, right?
It has to. I mean, it absolutely has to. I mean, there's way too much, at least from what I see anecdotally, there's just way too much stress on the system. Now, I know that Tennessee is joining that growing trend of offering technical and associate degree colleges, like the community colleges, are tuition free. So I would be interested to hear from some folks that do work in those types of environments. How has that impacted your funding? How has that impacted your ability to do projects when essentially it's been turned into an all-you-can-eat buffet for students. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that is an excellent starting point, because this gets students that may or may not have been ready to go into college at least get that taste before they start plunking down real money to go to a 4-year institution.
Yep. Yeah, we're kind of doing the same thing, where California now has their first online, the state of California, where you'll be able to get a community college is going to offer a 4-year degree.
Mm. Wow.
That's, I mean, that can change up a lot, you know, and I also think it's good because, I mean, there are people, like we said, who struggle. Now, I don't know, and financially that can help if you are raising small kids, or you have a family, or, you know, you have a family you have to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot with that. I mean, and, you know, and it's so funny because and Matthew added more context based on my comment, you know, the casino boss told 30% of the tradespeople 2 years. Wow. What does that do to your workforce and what you can get done? Oh,
yeah. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to have to think about that.
I just went through a bunch of hiring. You went through hiring and trying to find someone. And I know you had trouble, right? Finding the right person.
Yeah. We still have challenges filling our filling vacancies, just because, you know, speaking of education, there is no exact bachelor of AV out there. We all come from different backgrounds. You know, a lot of my team comes from both broadcasting and audio engineering and production. So there's everybody kind of finds their way to AV from different pathways. But I think that's good. That brings a diversity of ideas. We're not all being churned out with, you know, bachelors of computer science or computer engineering. You know, we've all seen and experienced different things.
Yeah. Well, I know when I got my philosophy degree, it said on there that AV, you know, to tech was something I could do with my philosophy degree.
Well, I mean, mine was general studies. So I guess I'm, you know, that kind of, my bachelor's was general studies. So, you know, I guess I can do just generally anything.
Yeah, Tim just put down on the chat, one of our steering committee members, that we should have that degree in AV. And I think sometimes we are getting there. Like, I know that our School of Music now offers a degree in recording. Well, I actually originally came for recording engineering, but they have an actual full production degree now where you can learn all aspects of it. Is that there? Is that close? It's close. I mean, obviously here it's aimed toward the LA entertainment industry, you know, just for our demographic, but that's close.
But that's interesting though. What would a bachelor's of AV look like? Like, would that be design? Would it be, you know, field techs? Would that be sales? Would that be engineering? What would that look like? Because AV encompasses everything.
Yeah.
And I think kind of like what Aaron Peterson earlier in the chat was talking about, you know, he gets to steer universities without the sales guy hounding you. And I think that's an important component on our teams, is the fact that, you know, we are, I think, internal integrators is one way I think I've heard it phrased before. We kind of we work with the salespeople, but make sure that what's being designed and delivered fits the needs, so we're not having a ton of bolt-ons.
Yep. 100%. Well, the chat's blowing up on this because people,
I like it.
I think that's it, right? Did we just nail this?
I think we did.
And I mean, because this is now exactly maybe where we need to go. And you pointed it out, because we're getting everyone saying Doug's got, you know, minor in media services. People, you know, Mike, another one of our steering committee members, was thinking about this, you know, instructional design. We've got, you know, ideas. You know, I mean, wow, we are blowing up. I love this. I'm going to have to we'll have to add this on when we post this all on our YouTube channel. We'll have to make sure the chat goes with this, because this is great stuff.
It is.
And I think you're right. And it's important, because you said, if you were going to create a degree in AV, would it be, you know, how to do an over under on wrapping a cable, or, you know, and, you know, cameras and audio? Sure. But is it also customer service? I mean, look at the CTS. I mean, a big part of the CTS is how to handle a customer, right? It's sales and those things that we need to know. I mean, that's one thing that I think cable management 101, absolutely. You know, I love this. This is totally blowing up. Theater technology, instructional design, business. I mean, this is exactly what we need in this industry. And that would be awesome if, I mean, the funny thing is why are we, I know I'm not, but are we training our staff in these things? I mean, we bring in people with this. Maybe we do it without thinking about it. I don't know.
I think we do. I think, especially whenever we do new onboarding for staff members, first thing we do is start putting them through VEXA courses. Like, if they don't already have a CTS, they're doing the first introduction to AV online, because, sometimes, like I said, they're coming from a different industry, an AV adjacent industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something that they kind of have a little bit of a background, but this is their first kind of getting started in the larger AV industry as a whole. So I think we do some professional development and kind of some of that knowledge transfer during the onboarding and orientation period. We might not even look at that as, doing an education standpoint, doing an educational component to the onboarding, but I think you're right. I think that's exactly what it is.
Yep. This is crazy. I'm watching the chat. There's such great ideas of things coming through. But yeah, I mean, we listed all those things and we didn't even say networking until it was brought up, and Kevin throws this out. And I mean, all the VLAN, I mean, this was just even last week's, podcast was, on being able to the AV-IT, connection. We're no longer separated. We are, right?
No, we are.
We basically are the same thing, right? But we're not the same thing, because I've never seen an IT guy go take a music production class. I mean, if we look at all the things that were coming across, the chat, we were still very, very music industry or video production based, and the AV adjacent, there it is, right? But now we all agree that we're part of IT, but we're still different.
We are. Yeah. I mean,
we're intrinsically different.
And I think I think we kind of live half in, half out of that world, because everything we do, to promote a little bit, we were talking about it during our AV over IP session coming up later today, but everything we do touches the network in some component by now. So we have to have knowledge of that network topology. We need to know who do we need to talk to on campus to get VLANs spun up, or specific IP addressing or subnets spun up. So you're absolutely right. We are IT now, whether or not we want to admit it. We're IT, just with more of a visual flair.
Yep, absolutely. And I love, so Mark, of course, Cox, ones and zeros, hearts and minds. And, and even just, and we've got, thankful for my, computer science degree, Craig, another one of our steering committee members. We have to no longer play well in the sand. We're building the same sandcastle. I love that. And that is exactly it, right? We are integrated as soon as that RJ45 was put, into a, into a box, that's it. It's now there, right?
I like what Michael Williams just said. We are IT, but the cool guy. So.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, right?
Yeah, we've got the fun toys. I mean, like you said, a lot of people come from a music production or a roadie background, so they've got the best stories.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, do we all have stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the one thing I love is all of the comments being put in here is everything that we're looking to talk about over the next few days.
Exactly.
Right? These are all the conversations when we got together and said, okay, what is it that if we were putting together this virtual conference, what are things that we'd want to talk about? And as a steering committee, we got together, we just kind of started listing things off. And this is it right there, right? We just nailed it all, and issues that we need to be thinking about, because it is very encompassing what we do, right? And I love, it's so funny because Adeline, who's on my staff, just put in the chat there too. And she's like, a BA in IT and a master's in instructional technology. Like understanding that there is this purpose behind IT that we do, kind of going back to that of being able to, understand how the widgets connect, but it's not the widgets that are making the difference in what we're doing.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of like what Adeline was saying that's kind of the other component to AV is the instructional technology aspect of it. Right. So it's not just, we're going to hang a flat panel on the wall. It's, how is that faculty member or that TA that's going to come in and instruct the students, how is that going to impact their lessons? Like, how are we going to be able to get that space designed to make them be able to deliver their content in the most effective manner? I mean, it's one of those services that we also have to provide that you're not going to, it's not really, it's taught somewhat, but unless you're out there experiencing it on a day-to-day basis, you're not going to be able to see the intricacies and the ins and outs right out the gate.
Mm-hmm. And it's so funny because I'm wondering if here's another difference between us and IT, and maybe I'm going to cause myself some trouble here. So hopefully my IT department's not listening. No, but you look at right back at CTS 101, right? Talking to your customer. In IT, do they make the decisions between here's the switches that we're going in, here's how our network's going to work, here's the Wi-Fi, whatever. I'm going to say, I'm staying stupid, ignorant, I don't understand how IT works stuff. But yet as AV people, we know end user first. Get in with the faculty, find out what their needs are. Let's talk to them and design around needs and solutions, not based on what we decide needs to go in, right?
Right.
Because we're not just pushing packets. We are pushing content, and that means something. And the content actually has, a purpose behind it. And I think, and I remember even when we were talking to Dean, who's our steering committee, and he talked about when he was at West Point, when the content doesn't work, the reason that it was important that the projector works was because that information could actually save lives. These are cadets at West Point, and that piece of information could actually, years from now, mean that somebody's life is saved or lost out on the battlefield. Mm-hmm. Do we look at what we do in that sense of seriousness, or we think, oh, it's just a humanities professor, they can work around it?
I don't think so. And you're right. When Dean said that, it was very striking to think of it in that term. I mean, you've got medical students or pharmacy students, they're seeing how chemicals and things interplay during lectures or on their screens. If they're not, something could click there and they figure out how to formulate something better. You're right. There are impacts that we don't see on a day-to-day basis because sometimes we get lost in the minutia of making sure things are working and making sure faculty members are doing okay. But it's important to kind of back up and not get subject to not seeing the forest because we're right there in front of all the trees. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I love this. So you said something. So Steve just made a good point. And I think you've said it before too. The humanities course 60 lose one student contact an hour for each minute delay. I mean, that's crazy, right? You said you've done a look into how much it costs, right? Or you just put a dollar value behind lost time.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at it and we had a faculty member that kind of helped point it out to us too when we really started thinking about it, is that in some of our larger auditoriums, you could have $3 to $4 million worth of tuition sitting in there at one time. That is a mind-boggling, and then you multiply that across 200, 300, 400 learning spaces on campus at any one time. Just thinking about the sheer amount of dollars that are sitting on a campus. And that doesn't even include when something goes down, your lost class time, because then you've got faculty member salary, the student dollars that are sitting there, all of the support staff that has to work around and make sure that something gets rescheduled successfully. Not to mention there are certain degree programs that require a certain amount of instructional hours before that degree can be certified, such as law. So when you think about it, there's a lot more to it than just going out there and plugging in that cable.
Oh, 100%. I mean, because I sit there and think, okay, now can we get selfish for a minute? Because if you just said, well, that's what we do, we're AV people. No, just kidding. If you were to go to your leadership and say, look, I understand that in this 300 seat auditorium that we have X million dollars worth of tuition sitting there at any one time. Now multiply that by the number of classes that go on there. Why are we afraid to go ask for a $20,000 upgrade?
Exactly.
I mean, if we can actually show up and improve the entire experience, understanding what that return on investment is, I mean, I think we often just look at, because we're afraid to ask for money and we have so many rooms to do. But that's a really small amount to pay to put in, Wi-Fi assisted listening devices. I mean, maybe those are things that are going to get talked about in the accessibility and universal design session coming on later today. But what are ways that we can improve the entire experience? It's not a lot of money if you put it compared to how much money is sitting in the room.
Exactly. And I think Matthew Fernley just kind of hit the nail on the head in his comments. The users of corporate AV are paid to use AV. The users of higher ed AV pay to use it. And that's that customer focused mentality that we really need to look at closely as we start, figuring out what we're going to do.
Oh, 100%. I love that, because it's true, right? And that's why there are customers, and it's easy to focus on the faculty because, yes, we serve the faculty, we serve the students through the faculty, but it is the student, the one who is actually, throwing themselves hundreds of $1,000s in debt, who are the real customers here.
Exactly. Yeah, they're the ones that are going to be sitting in the seats and taking the exams, and hopefully down the line as successful alumni contributing back to the successes of their university.
Yep. I mean, and that's, it's like but Donovan and Jim just put something here, that the faculty are unwilling to tolerate the loss of you in a few minutes. And Donovan puts, we start talking about student recruitment as an issue with bad AV deployment. Wow. Yeah. How about that? How about that when you go to the Welcome Center and they sit down with their parents talking about, whether they're going to attend there, and all of a sudden there's a black box on the video wall, right? Right in the middle, one panel out. That sure makes the school look great. And you can't get in there, but I mean, we really do have an impact, right? The sad part is it's probably more of a negative impact when things go wrong than a positive impact when they're right.
Well, it's one of those things where when it's going right, nobody ever thinks about it. They're just like, oh, it's working. It's kind of like you get in your car, you start it, you don't think about it. When things go wrong, in a highly visual environment, it's pretty apparent when things go wrong.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, well, and that's kind of our thing, right? So now let's talk about then, because this is where I'm going to say it. You ready?
Ready.
I'm saying AV as a service.
Oh.
I just said it.
We couldn't. I'll give you credit. We
39 minutes. 39 minutes in before I said AV as a service. Because, all right, well, now I've got one of my staff laughing at me through the window here. Because, how are we going to reach that SLA? I mean, if that panel is down and we've got to get in there and you've got to do it within 10 minutes of when the next crew comes in.
Joe, I still don't see it. It's what I call is the support air gap from getting the call in to the integrator to getting somebody on campus. I've got people positioned on my campus that are within 5 minutes of any building. So when a call comes in, we can be in a room within 5 minutes. And we did that basically because I think it was Donovan or someone said earlier, faculty don't tolerate downtime in the class, right? So how is that going to sound to my faculty and my administration when I say, we put the call into the integrator, but they can't get here for another 30 minutes. And then they got to try to find parking on campus and then get their equipment to whatever building. It's just, that's always been the issue. It's never been about the equipment and making sure that our equipment is life cycle. We have a plan to do that already. It's getting somebody in there and knowing that Professor so-and-so prefers this aspect ratio or prefers to have this lapel mic set out because of this reason. There are connections that we build on a daily basis with our faculty so that they can trust that we're working in their best interest and we want them to be successful. I just still fail to see that taking place with a service call, with bringing in an integrator that's just concerned about meeting that monthly quota and making sure that our bills are being paid on time versus a staff member from my team being on site and knowing what the impact of the work is that we do to make sure that that faculty member is successful.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to try something here. Can I go rogue?
Go for it.
All right. So we got a hand raise. All right. So everyone knows that we're kind of winging it here. All right. Because it's real conversation. This is Infocom you know, after hours, we're going to see what goes on. Sherry Murphy just raised her hand. And so I'm going to let her talk. I have no idea what's about to happen. And she unraised her hand.
Oh.
And there we go. And that made it really easy. Oh, no, back up. All right.
Okay.
So I'm going to allow her to talk. So Sherry, I feel like I'm going to inviting you to the show. Thank you for calling in. I've always wanted to do a call-in show.
This is a medium for a call-in show.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be.
Thank you for joining us.
You know what? It is my pleasure. And I hit that button by accident, which is why when you called on me, I unhit it by mess up. I'll just talk. My point was I have been in the AV business for a long time, both on the integration side and on the manufacturer side. And I'm on the manufacturer side right now. And I love the conversation because the one thing I've always said to my customers is you can't out technology the classrooms for the instructors. I sold interactive displays for a while, and I have to tell you, to higher ed, and I have to tell you, as great as they were, 2 or 3 instructors would use them. So, you know, you do have to keep in mind as AV integrators and manufacturers and everything else that people have to be able to use these classrooms. That's all I'm gonna say.
Hey, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah,
see,
surprise,
brought you in. and I guess here, and since you're on, I'll even get you do a plug. Who are you with?
I am with Liberty AV Solutions.
Hey, thank you for joining.
Connect everything in the classroom from the source to the display.
All right. Thanks for joining in the conversation. Now, if I can see how to, okay, I'm disabling and lowering, so I'm talking through it. Hey, but she makes a great point, right?
Yeah, excellent point.
And yeah, that was kind of cool. I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Now you realize like 85 hands are going to go up. No,
yeah, I'm
but isn't that it, right? But where is the line, right? We always say we can't over technology him. I think that's the word that she had used. And I think that's right? Because we need the right tools though. And is it the right tools for the job that's being done? And maybe that's different based on the use of the space. I mean,
it is. And, you know, Joe, a little peek behind the curtain on what we do is whenever we finally get whatever you want to call agreement on a college campus is on what spaces are going to be kind of refreshed and upgraded, kind of the key component, it goes back to the faculty. We bring the faculty into those learning spaces and say, hey, here's what we're thinking about doing. Are we right? Are we wrong? How do you want this to look whenever the keys are ready to be turned over to you? So listening to those customers, I can't tell you on how many older spaces that we've gone into where you can tell that just the most expensive and complex kit possible was sold and installed, oftentimes probably not even working 100%. But when you talk to the faculty, like, yeah, all I really need to do is just hook up my laptop and project. When you've got DSPs and matrix switchers and just a ton of stuff when it wasn't needed. So being able to talk to those faculty members and listen to what their needs are, you know, it's kind of like what you're saying, it's CTS 101, listening to the customer.
100%. And again, it always brings up the where's the standards line, right? What are we going to give to everybody and what are we going to give to few? You know, and sadly, I think maybe, you know, because I'm sure I'm the only institution this happens at where maybe their budget might impact that decision. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's only us.
Budgets are unlimited everywhere else but there, Joe.
You know what I say? Money's no object when you have none, right? Go for it. So, all right. So as we kind of, we look ahead. So we're going to give a little bit of a preview. All right, so we are going to play we talked about it before. What was the Johnny Carson?
Man.
A Carnat, right?
Carnat.
Yeah. So
Carnat the amazing.
We're going to guess what the state of higher ed is for each of the sessions coming up the rest of the conference.
Okay.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right. So first one we have coming up right after this is the AV over IP solution. Have you heard that AV is getting IP yet? I don't know. Have you heard
I've
about
heard
that?
rumors here and there.
Yeah. So it's the future of networked AV and UCC. So we've got Mike Patterson, BC. I've heard of him before. Mm-hmm. Dean and Jim are going to be moderating that. I don't know if you have other SMEs coming in, you're going to do that, but I feel like I'm cheating if I ask you to predict what you're going to talk about.
A little bit. That's a little bit of a cheat, but I'll just say this. We're going to talk about the fact that AV over IP is not just something recent. It's been out there for quite some time. It's just really now becoming the focus and forefront of AV. And is that because there are more solutions out there? Is it an untapped revenue stream? Stay tuned.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. All right. Do we want to do it again? We've got another hand raised.
I think we have to. Matthew's been chiming in quite a bit. Let's see what's going on.
He's had some really good stuff. All right, yes, Matthew, let's see if we can do this. I'm going to allow to talk, and let's see if he's in. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Hi, Matthew from Orlando, longtime listener, first-time caller.
Yes, my life is complete.
I love it. Mic drop. We're all going home now.
My question to the group is that as we look at the pressures on the vendors, they're kind of moving into what we refer to as the AV as a service space. I mean, if you're old enough to remember, $5,000 monitors with a 30% margin, it seems like a natural progression. One of my clients said that when you bring in AV as a service, when you're bringing in an outside vendor to the higher ed space, they're going to take care of the equipment, but not the relationship. And he pointed to the seats, the projector, and the instructor, that triangle right there. My question to the group is, I'm a strong believer that AV as a service doesn't really work in higher ed, but do you differentiate?
You're a very smart man. No.
That's how I found this group, was actually searching that and finding your treatise, Joe. My question is, when you're talking about monitoring, and when you're talking about that service, a number of the vendors will offer monitoring services. Is that something that you would see getting into, or do you see value in it? And how do you place that in your services, I should say?
Well, I mean, I'll take it first, and then I'll let BC jump there. I think that you're right. I mean, we will have an AV as a service session coming up tomorrow morning, and I'll set a rumor. We might actually talk about a way it can work in higher ed. How about that for a rumor? That I might actually talk about a contract I have in hand. But here's the thing. When you talk about monitoring, I think monitoring has its value, but I wonder what way of monitoring, because we've got Fusion, we've got GVE, we've got the same tools. So the question is, at what level of monitoring can be given to us that we can't already do? That's really the question, right? And then with that monitoring, and Jim just put it down, they're already part of manufacturers' tool sets, right? So with that, I also have boots on the ground at this already when that monitor goes off. So I don't need the monitor and then someone to call me and say, oh, by the way, when can we get in? We hear there's a problem here. And I understand that, as things become more network-based, maybe things can be done remotely. I mean, I get some of that, but I literally could send someone within 5 minutes to that space to verify. That's a tough one to overcome on an integrated. I don't know. BC, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm the exact same boat as you are. We already have those tools available to us. So I don't necessarily see a need to bring in an integrator that's sitting in another part of town to call me and let me know that a projector just went down, or hey, this box just got unplugged from the network. I do, however, see a lot of applicability for that in a more corporate environment where they don't necessarily have AV folks sitting down the hall. They might have an AV person for every few buildings in different cities. So I do see it from that perspective, but I'd still I still don't know how that would work on a higher ed campus when I already have the same tools. And like Joe was saying, I've got people sitting just a few minutes away from it that can check those tools and get out there before we could even get a call in to a service, get a service call into an integrator.
Yep, 100%. I hope, Matthew, that answers your question really quickly. You can say who you're with. Who are you with?
I am with AV Analytics, and I am out of Orlando, Florida. And what I do is I go in and I produce analytics to be able to answer all these questions that we're bringing up today.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for the question, and great stuff on the chat. All right, so disable talking, go through this. Okay, they're lining up. I feel like we just turned into a call-in show.
We did just turn into a call-in show.
The state of higher ed is a call-in show.
You know what? Just it's the first time we rolled the dice on something like this, and I love it.
Let's go with it. Let's go with it. All right. So James, and I did a call out to James. So James was, let me see, allowed to talk. So James, I think you're the one that I gave. Hey, how's it going? I gave a call out to you already about something you had stated. So welcome, and we know each other. So
well, good morning. Good morning to everybody here, and thank you for making this platform available for everybody. I think having this kind of discussion really opens up our minds into really what's out there. And taking advantage of the best solutions. I think your students and even, students really deserve, to have the best solutions that we can provide. Because, what I said earlier, they are the future leaders. They are our future workforce. So they have a direct impact to our society. Mm-hmm. And manufacturers, our goal should be how to become a better partner to our customers, to USC, to the community colleges, and everybody has different challenges. At LACCD, for example, where I've been providing technology for a period of about 15 years, cost is very important to them. And then we go to a private school where cost isn't as important. So, but we still have to make an impact to everybody. So monitoring and alerts, I think is definitely something that can be leveraged, but you have to have the right tools and also being able to remotely reach out to that classroom without having to pack up my tools, get on a golf cart and drive across campus to fix a source or a switch, related issue. So we should have tools that allows you to, remotely manage, get alerts, and have instant fixes, automatic fixes, when the system finds out, hey, there's something not communicating in that classroom. Have self-healing scenarios. So
we're talking robots that fix themselves and take over the world.
Software defined.
But I think that's it. Because again, you're with Utelligy, so and that really is a software defined ecosystem. And I think that there is something there, and I'll throw BC because again, as we go, I really think that your AV over IP is going to be like a hit here, because is that not, if you're talking again monitoring and you're talking about maybe it's working with our IT group, right? And maybe there's something there as to ways, because again, now are we putting all of our AV, let's take, take NVX, you're throwing it on a switch, right? Right. If you're putting it on a switch, that means you're taking your main box and you're putting it in the hands of the IT group that maybe themselves have a 48-hour SLA to get back to you.
Well, it goes back to that communication standpoint and having those understandings with your campus partners. So we're very lucky in the fact that we have an excellent relationship with our networking group. They kind of saw what we wanted to do with AV over IP, and we're very accommodating at the outset to make sure that it was successful. Because kind of like we talked about earlier, they want to see the university succeed just as much as everyone else. So having those conversations early on, and again, it might not be something that works for your particular situation at that time. It still might make sense to use the traditional ways that are not necessarily as that NVX style solution or that Utology style solution. So it's kind of all about knowing your environment, knowing what resources are available to you, and then making a decision based upon that. You don't want to be charging headlong into something without knowing you're going to have the appropriate backup to be successful.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So, hey, again, James, thank you so much. And we will, and again, it was Utology. And so we're going to go on. I do want to say something because one of our panelists here, as well as the steering committee, made a point that we are doing a Q&A session as the very last, and it is actually a call-in show. And also, just so you know, Mr. Gary Kay from Rave Pubs is going to moderate that. So it's going to be a really good session. He is peeking in and just kind of paying attention to things that we're talking about. So we're going to have a great conversation. So I definitely, I love our call-in show, but do note if things come up and it's not during the Q&As of each session, and each session will have its own Q&A, you can come back for that. And hopefully that's going to be a really, really good session. So it is going to be a happy hour, depending upon your time zone, the beverage of choice. I'm going to call it coffee hour because it's 9:30 a.m. here. I don't know. Well,
why is that stopping you?
I know. We're on the college campus. That wouldn't be the first one. All right, we're gonna do one more though, and we're gonna take Steve. Steve, thank you. And we have someone in higher ed calling in. So Steve Borho, I think. All right, unmuted and welcome. Thank you for calling the show.
Hi. Well, good. I got feedback there that says my mic is working, so that's always.
There you go. It's just so scary for me too, whether or not this is going to work. So
for sure, sure. I wanted to pick up on something that BC said and it was around AV as a service potentially working in corporate, and that may be. But the thing that struck me is that I believe, and this is only my opinion, so I'm totally willing to be corrected. I believe that our busy classrooms are used more hours per day than a busy meeting room in a corporate environment.
Oh, without a doubt.
Classrooms are 14 hours a day. And I don't know what a typical booking schedule would be like for a busy meeting room in a corporate environment. Would that be every other hour? Would that be 3 hours in the morning and 3 in the afternoon? Would it, I'm not sure. So there's potentially breaks in between when a AV as a service provider could get in there. Yeah, we don't have that in our classrooms.
No, and Steve, you're absolutely right. It's we've got spaces on campus that are in use from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. every single day of the week, except maybe on Sundays. It's just what we put in there has to be able to accept an incredible amount of abuse and demand because, space is limited on a college campus. Granted, you might have a ton of spaces, but, all spaces aren't exactly equal. So you've got those larger auditorium spaces or those specialized lab spaces that we're going to get pounded on day in and day out. And we're not going to have time to necessarily have a vendor come out and do a 10-minute service call between classes just to change something out. I think somebody in the chat, forgive me, I can't remember who it was, but wrote earlier in there, what does that even look? What does a 10-minute window SLA even look like in a contract? Like, how do you even price that out? Is it like 10 minutes and we're going to charge you an hour, or are we going to charge you by the minute? How does that even work, right? So, I mean, the access standpoint of actually physically getting into the space is always going to be a big challenge as well. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm not even going to add comment because that's exactly it, right? If you're looking at classes start 7 a.m. and go to 10 p.m. or whatever, now good luck. And at least we can kind of work around and we can hone things. We build relationships with faculty who maybe will be more understanding, or the faculty who won't be AV heavy, that allows you maybe 2 breaks to go across. I don't know. There's a lot to think about there. So Steve, really quick, just tell everyone who are you with?
Yeah, I'm with University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada.
Hey, we're international now.
International now.
International. I love it. All right. And I saw Rob in the chat too. So we're in the UK as well. We are spanning the globe. All right. Hey, thanks so much, Steve.
You're welcome.
All right. All right. So
Yeah, Aaron, I want to call out Aaron Peterson here. He wrote, room utilization percentages are a huge reason for both in our solutions. You know, rooms that are confusing to use don't get used. I mean, that's exactly right. You've got to, the way our policy is written on campus on what gets that centralized funding component is purely based upon how much is that room used. You know, is it worth the university's central investment to provide the latest and most reliable technologies in it? You know, that you're exactly right. We've got to build for uptime.
Yep, 100%. All right, are we going to try to get through our plan, or did we just throw it out the window? We're going to do it. All right. So we did one. We did AV over IP. I guess there. Now the one I'm looking forward to.
Yes.
11 a.m., 2 p.m. So 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Accessibility and universal design. This is the one that I am looking for. The two moderators here. And by the way, they have a rock star group coming in. Okay.
Oh, without a doubt.
We have, so obviously Josh and Jim, both on our steering committee. So Josh is basically Mr. Accessibility expert. The things that they've been doing and the way he thinks about it. I don't know if anyone listened to the episode where I had him on the podcast and think about universal design and the way you should use your class design. It's mind blowing. And of course, Jim at Utah State, they using Alexa voice control in their rooms. They've got SME Mark Coxon, who just said see you in a while, who is with Tangram, but of course using space design as part of that. And then of course they've got Valerie, who I was chatting with coming in, is an SME who uses the script. Like I don't want to get into it, but to me, it's amazing because I always think it's so easy to get into me deciding what I think should go in a classroom. And you forget about everyone. And everyone deserves the same right to that education as anyone else. And we have to be able to pay attention to that.
I'll look at all the great sessions that we're going to be doing over the next few days. But the accessibility and universal design session, that's truly what our business is about. Making sure things are accessible and designed in a way that anybody can see it and anybody can use it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's the one I'm most looking forward to.
Yeah, I don't even want to guess what's going to go on there because that's so stoked about that one. All right, tomorrow morning, AV as a service. I'm going to kick off my day with hashtag AV as a service must die. Or is it AV as a service might have a possibility? All right, since I'm on the panel with Scott and Mike and Donovan, you tell me, what's your prediction? What's going to happen?
Madness, chaos. Thanos. I don't even know. It's always fun when you and Chris mix it up on AV in the AMs on Sunday mornings over AV as a service, and kind of seeing you poke the bear of the integrators and sales folks out there on why this is not working or why this won't work or why can't anybody answer my questions. So I expect a lively debate. I think we might make a little bit of progress on there because you do have some very stand-up people that are going to give you, truthful answers. They're not going to try to sell you a line. So it's going to be interesting if nothing else. I think it's going to advance the conversation a lot, though.
Yep, I do encourage people because we all have lots of free time. If you can go over to Rave and read Scott's articles on it, if you go to Commercial Integrator and read or even look at when they interviewed me for AV as a service, it's a good context. It's serious. It's not going away. It is coming to our industry and it's going to show up on your campus. So it's something we need to think about and we need to know about. And we are one of the most lucrative verticals for the industry. So this is something we need to actually take charge in. So I encourage people to come to that one. The next one right after that, so Scott's going to be doing a twofer, and he's just staying on. Esports. I am Mr. Esports. Like, I know nothing of this stuff. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you the interest. So Scott and Donovan are overseeing that one, kind of what to expect. How does esports look? I think I tweeted this out of, we do a big pep rally before the UCLA game, right?
Mhm.
And where they bring up the football team, the basketball team, all that. They brought up the esports team as well.
Mhm.
And they
That's
got
awesome.
like screams. It shocked the heck out of me.
Yeah,
Are
I mean,
you
I
seeing
think,
that?
I mean, when you look at the market between Infocom this summer and some of the booths that had esports, and then I was really shocked at EduCause this past couple months ago, had a massive amount of esports content, which to me, the EduCause specific one, because that's where educators go. You know, that's where your instructional technology departments are, your center for teachings are going. So when you start seeing esports pop up there, that's a pretty big indicator that this is coming down the train tracks, you know, and it's going to get you. If you're not already positioning yourself and learning about esports, you need to do it right now. This is $1 billion industry, and it has massive ramifications for the higher ed industry in that you're not tied to large stadiums, or you're not tied to specific calendars, you know, in baseball season, football season. This is an all year sport, and there are billions of dollars in advertising out there that universities could start tapping very soon. I know that I think it was University of Kentucky just spun up an esports program and is partnering with one of their main advertisers to get this kind of lifted and going, because it is so big. It is so huge.
Yep. And again, the chat's blowing up, and, you know, Donovan put here, you know, more viewership than the World Series. That's crazy. We got at OU there. Mike puts here that they're talking about it, keeping it within, I think at Oakland University, Doug's got esports as the buzz. I mean, this is crazy. But here's the thing. It's great, but what does that mean for us? A lot of this are just, hey, a classroom is a little MLC and a projector, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a place to plug in an HDMI cable. Now we're building stadiums,
Right.
And we're building, and like, is this going to go to, are they bringing in the same people that design our football stadiums and our basketball arenas? Or are we keeping control of this? I think we're keeping control of it because it's a video game and people still think it's IT, right? If it's based on computers, it's IT. Well, that means we have to become experts in, you know, some major design projects. And, you know, even Panasonic at Infocom, right? Their booth was an esports competition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's crazy.
Yeah, Dell had the same thing in EduCause. They had you know, esports athletes, and I say athletes because if you look at some of the scientific studies, an esports athlete will burn more calories during a match than a football player will, or a baseball player will, because they're having to keep their mind moving so fast and so rapidly that it keeps that heart rate up. So it truly is. It's crazy to think how fast this is moving and how fast this is growing.
Yep, I love it. Christopher just put, you know, it's time to get ahead of the curve so that we own it. Love it. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We should this is a huge, and even for maybe people in their institutions that are looking to have more influence, and maybe they're in just a corner of, they only do the classrooms, and maybe they want to take on events, or they're a siloed organization. Maybe having esports and taking that as a way to then move into the athletics or move into, you know, areas like that. I think in Notre Dame, where they actually do things with the stadium and classrooms, and right, they have a lot of maybe this is that method to be able to do that.
Yeah, I guarantee you, if you research what esports is, and if you don't have an esports program, or if it's a fledgling one, if you take that information to your provost, I guarantee you you're gonna get buy-in very quickly. Absolutely.
Love it. All right, next one up, vendor relationships. So Mike, and I love this. So Mike and Craig. So Mike's is at Iowa State, and he was a former integrator, many years. Now in the higher ed space, we'll have a great take on that. And then Craig is at Cal Baptist, where I formerly was, and has great relationships with his vendors. So this is going to be a really good one, because we know, and people must think I hate integrators, but I don't. We need our partners, and our partnerships are so important, right? That's really what makes a huge difference. So your take, what do you think they're going to talk about?
I think that they're really going to kind of get into how to build a vendor relationship. Like, how do you know you have a good vendor relationship? What do we expect out of vendors? I heard it said earlier, partnerships are key with vendors. And I think there was something that was on the AV and the AM yesterday was talking about, is it good to text with your vendor contacts? What's the appropriate level of contact?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a big one, because I know some of the larger universities, we have, we talk to vendors and see vendors on a weekly basis, but maybe some of these smaller institutions or these more rural institutions don't necessarily get that same interaction or even really know how to start building that interaction. So I think I'm really looking forward to seeing some tips and tricks on how to kind of start getting more involved with vendor selection and how to work with vendors.
Yep. Nope. Totally agree. And I think that's the key is really, and also it's leveraging the partnerships and the relationships, right? Because it's just different. We're not, a corporate entity that focuses on other things. And we just need someone to come in, hook up my conference room and my showroom and then leave. And then maybe be on the call in case I have issues. We have very, very different working relationships. So this is going to be an important one. So that closes up Tuesday. Then first thing Wednesday morning, so we with HETMA, we put out a survey early as kind of our one of the very first things we did, just to kind of talk about staffing, classroom needs, HR needs, those types of things that we need to think about. The tangibles, how many people per space do we need? What kind of scope? Things like that. I mean, you're the main moderator for that one. So I can't, I won't let you guess what you're going to talk about, but I think, again, this is going to be much more of a collaborative session too, right? And just talking about kind of, what are the pain points that we face?
And that's my goal, is because one thing I've learned, especially looking at other studies that have been done, I think it was the Sexton Group that puts out usually a fairly annual study of classroom staffing support, is there's ways to do it and some best practices, but everybody does it a little bit different. One thing we always look at is how many spaces do you have? But I know it was specific to our campus. It's not necessarily how many spaces do we have, it's the geography. Geography is our enemy when it comes to support, because we've got a cluster of buildings. You can put those together fairly easily, but if you've got a building over here and then a building over here, getting someone there is always going to be a challenge. But you also can't necessarily go to your administration and say, hey, I need to hire an FTE for this one building because I can't get somebody else to it. So how to navigate around some of those challenges, and talking about metrics. Metrics is something that we're taking a really big deep dive on our campus. So I look forward to talking with some folks on how they do metrics, because a support ticket doesn't always tell the whole story. You might have a support ticket come in and say, hey, I need help for every one of my 20 upcoming classes, but you've only got support metrics for that one request. So, kind of how to tell that entire story is one thing I'm really looking forward to hearing from the community.
Yeah,
and zip lines would be excellent. Yes.
Yeah, right off the tall building, all the way across campus.
I don't know how HR is going to write that into the job description, but we're going to see what we can make happen.
I love it. But yeah, student employees, that's a good way. There's so many different factors. So I think that's going to turn into a great conversation, and even a great way to just throw ideas, because I know we all struggle with staffing and just those things that it's not only about the technology. It's, how are we going to service it? Because if we don't, then that means maybe we have to sign the AV as a service contract because no one else will have to. No. All right. I didn't go there. All right. Okay. So that's that one. And then we're going to finish off. We've got a great session to close us off. And that is the coffee happy hour, or beverage of choice, I guess, depending, we'll see how the week goes. It might have Bailey's in there. No. But we've got Gary Kay from Rave Pubs, who's also obviously a faculty member at University of North Carolina. And so everyone is obviously familiar, with UB Tech and, the keynotes he's done there and good connection. So he's going to moderate the session with all of us steering committee members. So this is where we're going to be raising the hand, where we're going to be able to, get people on, bring us your questions, the conversations, if there's things that struck you from the rest of the sessions that you didn't get a chance to talk about, or maybe you listened to a session and then went talk to your staff about it and more questions came up. This is that opportunity. So he'll be moderating that. I think it's gonna be a great conversation. I don't know. I guess I don't know how you make a prediction, but BC? What's the prediction on that one?
I think the prediction is that it's going to be the perfect bookend of this week. You know, like I said, this is something that I've never ran into before. I've never participated in a virtual conference before. So I think the fact that people can dip in and see what they want to see and be able to kind of get information how they, you know, when they want to get it, how they want to get it through this whole process. I think it's great. And I think it'll be great to kind of circle back around and summarize the week during this period. Continue on some of those conversations that we've started during these processes.
Yep, 100%. I think that's it, and that's how we're going to finish off. And hopefully, this will be a good kickstart into doing this more regularly. Because the beauty is there are no costs involved in running this conference. So
yeah, the expense report is very easy to fill out for this.
Absolutely. We do hope everyone finds great value in this, and you found value so far, and it has been worth your time. BC and I are going to kind of sign out, and then we have our next panel. Well, actually not BC. BC is going to stay on. But we're going to take a little time out now. This is, as everyone noticed, you had one link. So kicking off at 9:30, we will be doing the next session on the AV over IP. The panelists will be popping in and out. You just put this on the background, you let it run, and hopefully this is going to be a great week. So thank you all. This is, so far, it's fantastic, and I just hope to see a lot more of this conversation.
Yeah, thank you guys very much for attendance. I think I saw at one point we were up to 75 people in attendance. You know, that was actually, honestly, Joe, more than I was really expecting for first thing on a Monday morning. I think it's great. Looking forward to carrying on the conversation here in about 15 minutes. So if you would, stick around. We're going to keep it going.
Oh, and Chris, he was just off to a commercial break. Why didn't we sell the blood? We could have made some money on this. We could have had, you know, you think there's a manufacturer listening in right now who would have, no, just kidding. All right. That was it. We'll leave it at that. Thank you all. We'll see you in 12 minutes for the next session.
Yep. See you guys then.
All right.